check the sound real quick. Make sure I don't sound crazy. Liberty, if you hear this before I can check it, then send me a message. Let me know. I be trying that music, man. It don't love me like I be wanting it to. Bananas. Okay, we not hearing no music at all, right? Okay, so it sound fine on Facebook. Okay, give me a second, man. I'll be right back. Okay. All right, as you see, we got something a little different with the setup. So let me make sure it ain't tripping. As you already tell, we've been having some sort of issues. It's all good. So I got me a little mic thing, so I don't got to keep trying to hold that mic, which was crazy before. So thanks, family. We're moving on up. All right, so you're gonna sit here and watch me check to make sure the music was going crazy, sounding a little ridiculous. Wait a minute. Okay. All right. It look a little dark in here. Let's see. Facebook, okay. Let's check YouTube. A little bit how we doing on TikTok. We seem good. What are we on? Liberty, you like the setup? YouTube good. It do look a little dark in here, man. I'm gonna have to change one of these lights. Give me a second. All right, let's see if that helps. Let's look a little brighter. I know YouTube like 10 minutes behind, so that's pretty good. Nope. I'm just extra chocolate, y'all. I hate to tell you. I hate to tell you. Um, Listen, I'm sorry. I know you get to hear that too, but lo siento, y'all. Seriously. Lo siento. I can't help it. Okay. They don't let me monitor all the chats at one. That sucks. Just Twitch and YouTube. All right. Well, we're gonna get this party started. Welcome to Book Club. Man. Um, glad to be back with you all. Uh, as you see, got a little setup. I'm trying to make it a little easier to read. Add something to the repertoire. You know the routine. I got the bowl, so we're gonna do the big bowl today, and we are on The Crown, I believe. Let's see. Let me get my little notes, my cheat sheet. I gotta start using these buttons, like giving y'all a round of applause. There you go. Let's see. I'm very chocolate, yeah. See if this helps. All right, I ain't gonna hold you all night. I should have did this earlier, but I was putting the thing together, and all right. So, let's see what breathing exercise we want to do tonight. I want to do that for a 7-8. So, if you recall, oh yeah, we start a new book tonight. I'll tell you that it's going to be the Celestine Prophecies. I felt like that'd be a good follow up to The Alchemist, which was a excellent book about trusting yourself, trusting the signs, and chasing your personal legend, which essentially is your dreams. So I like that. Chase your dreams. And as a person who has reinvented himself many different times, lived so many different lives on this timeline, that I can appreciate that idea of chasing your dreams. So I'm gonna turn down the noise cancellation a little bit because our homeboy Masir said you can't really hear you when you because it works very well with this mic. But we'll start with the sound bowl, and then we'll do the breathing and the visualization, and we off and running. I feel like the truth. So, hey, there I go. I want to see what it looked like on TikTok. Hey, thank you. Hey, don't it look like that? But it's not because my shirt is like it's like old hot pink color, old hot pink color. That's how I know my lighting off. So I didn't set my camera up right. Um, let me see. I mean, since we already sitting here waiting. All right, see, it was worth it. Cause now you can see the chocolate clearly. You know what I mean? I don't look so invisible. So, and that, my friend, is why I bought an extra camera. Yeah, that's what the jacket was yesterday, salmon. Um, I don't know. I've been doing that color therapy, so that indigo we was working with yesterday, man, that helped. And when I was doing some meditation on myself, I got stuck on red, man. I felt like a puppy. Like when they be sunbathing, that thing was wild. And then so it might be something to this pink. I've been craving yellow too because I've been eating banana bread like crazy. So I gotta add that to my diet. Well, banana bread and bananas. So that yellow, I've been trying to get it in me. So I gotta look up I gotta see what's going on with pink. And my spirit is trying to tell me something because you're right. I have been wearing variations of it regularly. Well, heart is green. So um no, but leading up to last weekend when I did some hard work, I was eating salad, I was wearing green, I was just went on this green thing. So I guess I did that hard work. And listen, um so I did a shroom trip. I mean, excuse me, I did a spiritual journey for someone. And while they were here, they kept seeing glitter. And when I was doing my own meditation, I found out that's how my love be showing up like glitter. Wild. Listen, it ain't like my throat, because my throat was not trying to make no noise. I've been doing work on my stomach lately. right. So if you recall, the breathing is 4, 7, 8. We breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. And we're going to do that 4 times in a row. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. On my count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Take a deep breath. On my count of 3, let's go again. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 more times. On my 3, 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time, really focus in on your breath and release on those out, on that out for 8. My count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out for 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So we are on our crown, and the color for your crown is purple. So as I stated before, we are trying to hold on, let me see. Trying to add a little bit of color therapy to our reading, and I am intentionally trying to have the colors match whatever chakra we're on. So, color for your crown, which rests right above your head, is purple. And the element for your crown is thought. And it is an exercise in imagination. So I want you to close your eyes. After that breathing exercise, your mind should be clear and free. And I want you to just breathe for a little bit and find comfort in the silence of your mind. And as you're enjoying that comfort, my third eye must be on fire today. I keep rubbing my forehead. And as you enjoy the comfort of the silence of your mind, I want you to think of the most beautiful flower you've ever seen. I want you to think about the colors, the creases in the petals. I want you to see the pollen and the stem. I want you to be able to stare and see each and every little petal individually and every granule of pollen. And as you look into that flower, I want you to picture yourself and attach the most beautiful thing you've ever seen to the essence of who you are. I want you to think. I want you to know. I want you to feel. I want you to believe that you are worthy and powerful. And as you think about that, I want you to begin to imagine yourself in the life that you want. Start off just picturing yourself in your house, apartment, or however you're living. I want you to begin to smell peace. I want you to smell love. I want you to feel and believe and know that you have the power and ability to turn your thoughts and dreams into reality. I want you to claim knowing the proper steps to do that for yourself. And as you are thinking about the life that you are going to live, I want you to repeat after me. I am divine. I am connected to the universe. I am at peace. I release doubt and welcome faith. I am divine. I am connected to the universe. I am at peace. I am a spiritual being. I release doubt and welcome faith. So, only had the opportunity to enjoy that. Oh, well, have a great day at work, Liberty. Uh, okay, I see. We're going to get this party started. Move this back a little bit. Make it too much in my face. Again, the Celestine Prophecies. And it's a story about a guy in search of the key insights of life and his journey to find them. Okay, give me a second. I need some water. I was not prepared today. Forgive me, y'all. I'm doing the most. Mm. A critical mass. I drove to the restaurant and parked, then leaned back in my seat to think for a minute. Charlene, I knew, would already be inside waiting to talk with me. But why? I hadn't heard a word from her in 6 years. Why would she have shown up now, just when I had sequestered myself into the woods for a week? I stepped out of the truck and walked towards the restaurant. Behind me, the last glow of sunset sank in the west and cast highlights of golden amber across a wet parking lot. Everything had been drenched an hour earlier by a brief thunderstorm, and now the summer evening felt cool and renewed, and because of the fading light, almost surreal. A half moon hung overhead. As I walked, old images of Charlene filled my mind. Was she still beautifully intense? How would time have changed her? And what was I to think of this manuscript she had mentioned? This ancient artifact found in South America that she couldn't wait to tell me about? I have a 2 hour layover at the airport, she said on the telephone. Can you meet me for dinner? You're going to love what this manuscript says. It's just your kind of mystery. My kind of mystery? What does she mean by that? Inside, the restaurant was crowded. Several couples waited for tables. When I found the hostess, she told me Charlene had already been seated and directed me towards the terrace area above the main dining area. I walked up the steps and became aware of a crowd of people surrounding one of the tables. The crowd included two policemen. Suddenly, the policeman turned and rushed past me down the steps. As the rest of the people dispersed, I could see past them to the person who seemed to have been the center of attention, a woman, still seated at the table, Charlene. I quickly walked up to her. Charlene, what's going on? Is anything wrong? She tossed her head back in a mock exasperation and stood up, flashing her famous smile. I noticed that her hair was perhaps different, but her face was exactly as I remember. Small, delicate features, wide mouth, huge blue eyes. You wouldn't believe it, she said, pulling me into a friendly hug. I went to the restroom a few minutes ago, and while I was gone, someone stole my briefcase. What was in it? Nothing of importance, just some books, magazines that I was taking for the trip. It's crazy. The people at the other table told me someone just walked in, picked it up, and walked out. They gave the policeman a description, and the officer said they would search the area. Maybe I should help look. No, forget about it. I don't have much time and I want to talk to you. I nodded, and Charlene suggested that we sit down. A waiter approached, so we looked over the menu and gave him our order. Afterwards, we spent 10 to 15 minutes chatting in general. I tried to I tried to underpay myself, impose isolation, but Charlene picked up on my vagueness. She leaned over and gave me that smile again. So what's really going on with you? I looked at her eyes, at the intense way she was looking at me. You want the whole story immediately, don't you? Always, she said. Well, the truth is, I'm taking some time for myself right now and staying at the lake. I've been working hard and I'm thinking about changing directions in life. I remember you talking about that lake. I thought you and your sister had to sell it. Not yet, but the problem is property taxes. Because the land is so close to the city, the taxes keep increasing. She nodded. So what are you going to do next? I don't know yet. Something different. She gave me an intriguing look. Sounds as if you're as restless as everyone else. I suppose, I said. Why do you ask? It's in the manuscript. There was a silence as I returned her gaze. Tell me about this manuscript, I said. She leaned back in her chair as if to gather her thoughts. Then she looked at me in the eyes again. I mentioned on the phone, I think, that I left the newspaper several years ago and joined a research firm that investigates cultural and demographic changes for the UN. My last assignment was in Peru. While I was there completing some research for the University of Lima, I kept hearing rumors about an old manuscript that had been discovered. Only no one could give me any of the details, not even the departments of archaeology or anthropology. And when I contacted the government about it, they denied any knowledge whatsoever. One person told me that the government was actually working to suppress this document for some reason, although again, I had no direct knowledge. You know me, she continued, I'm curious. So when my assignment was over, I decided to stay around for a couple of days and see what I could find out. At first, every lead I pursued turned out to be another dead end. But then, while I was eating lunch at a cafe outside of Lima, I noticed a priest watching me. After a few minutes, he walked over and admitted that he had heard me inquiring about this manuscript earlier in the day. He wouldn't reveal his name, but he agreed to answer all my questions. She hesitated for a moment, still looking at me intensely. He said the manuscript dates back to about 600 BC. It predicts a massive transformation in human society. Beginning when? I asked. In the last decade of the 20th century. Now? Yes, now. What kind of transformation is this supposed to be? I asked. She looked embarrassed for a moment, then with force said, the priest told me it's the kind of renaissance in consciousness occurring very slowly. It's not religious in nature, but it's spiritual. We're discovering something new about human life on this planet and about what our existence means. And according to the priest, this knowledge will alter human culture dramatically. She paused again, then added, the old priest told me the manuscript is divided into segments or chapters, each devoted to a particular insight into life. The manuscript predicts that in this time period, human beings will begin to grasp these insights sequentially, one insight, then another, as we move forward to where we are now, to a completely spiritual culture on earth. I shook my head and raised my eyebrows cynically. Do you really believe all this? Well, she said, I think. Look around, I interrupted, pointing at the crowd sitting at the room below us. This is the real world. Do you see anything changing out there? Just as I said that, an angry remark erupted from the table near the far wall, a remark I couldn't understand, but which was loud enough to hush the entire room. At first, I thought the disturbance was another robbery, but then I realized it was only an argument. A woman appearing to be in her 30s was standing up and staring indignantly at a man sitting across from her. No, she yelled. The problem is that this relationship is not happening the way I want it. Do you understand? It's not happening. She composed herself, tossed her napkin on the table, and walked out. Charlene and I stared at each other, shocked that the outburst had occurred at the very moment we were discussing the people below us. Finally, Charlene nodded toward the table where the man remained alone and said, it's the real world that's changing. How? I asked, still off balance. The transformation is beginning with the first insight. And according to the priest, this insight always surfaces unconsciously at first as a profound sense of restlessness. Restlessness? Yes. What are we looking for? That's just it. At first, we aren't sure. According to the manuscript, we're beginning to glimpse at an alternate kind of experience, moments in our life that feel different somehow, more intense and inspiring. But we don't know what this experience is or how to make it last. And when it ends, we're left feeling dissatisfied and restless with a life that seems ordinary again. You think this restlessness was behind the woman's anger? Yes, she's just like the rest of us. We're all looking for fulfillment in our lives. and we won't put up with anything that seems to bring us down. This restless searching hmm, is what's behind the me first attitude that has characterized the recent decades, and it's affecting everyone from all Wall Street to street gangs. She looked directly at me, and when it comes to relationships, we're so demanding that we're making them near impossible. Her her remark brought back the memory of my last two relationships. Both had begun intensely, and both within a year had failed. When I focused on Charlene again, she was waiting patiently. What exactly are we doing to our romantic relationships? I asked. I talked with the priest a long time about this, she replied. He said that when both partners in a relationship are overly demanding, when each expects each other to live in his or her world, to always be there to join in his or her chosen activities, an ego battle inevitably develops. What she said struck home. My last two relationships had indeed degenerated into power struggles. In both situations, we had found ourselves in a conflict of agendas. The pace had been too fast. We had too little time to coordinate our different ideas about what to do, where to go, what interest to pursue. In the end, the issue of who would lead, who would determine the direction for the day, had become an irresolvable difficulty. Because of this control battle, Charlene continued, the manuscript says that we will find it very difficult to stay with the same person for any length of time. That doesn't seem very spiritual, I said. That's exactly what I told the priest, she replied. He said, remember that while most societies' recent ills can be traced to the restlessness and searching, the problem is temporary and will come to an end. We're finally becoming conscious of what we're really looking for, of what this other, more fulfilling experience really is. When we grasp it fully, we'll have we'll have attained the first insight. Our dinner arrived, so we paused for several minutes as the waiter poured more wine and to taste each other's food. When she reached across the table to take a bite of my salmon from my plate, Charlene wrinkled her nose and giggled. I realized how easy it was to be with her. Okay, I said, what is this experience we're looking for? What is the first insight? She hesitated as though unsure how to begin. This is hard to explain, she said, but the priest put it this way. He said the first insight occurs when we become conscious of the coincidences in our lives. Like I say, life's synchronicity. I stopped calling it ironic. She leaned towards me. Have you ever had a hunch or intuition concerning something you wanted to do, some course you wanted to take in life, and wondered how it might happen? And then, after you had forgotten all about it and focused on other things, you suddenly met someone or read something or went somewhere that led to the very opportunity you envisioned? Well, she continued, according to the priest, these coincidences are happening more and more frequently at that. When they do, they strike us beyond what would be expected by pure chance. They feel destined, as though our lives have been guided by some unexplained force. The experience induces a feeling of mystery and excitement, and as a result, we feel more alive. The priest told me that this experience that we've glimpsed and that we're now trying to manifest all the time. More people every day are convinced that this mysterious movement is real and it means something, that something else is going on beneath everyday life. This awareness is the first insight. Don't you see? She asked. The first insight is reconsideration of the inherent mystery that surrounds our individual lives on this planet. We're experiencing these mysterious coincidences, and even though we don't understand them yet, we know they are real. We are sensing again, as in childhood, that there's another side of life that we have yet to discover, some other process operating behind the scenes. Charlene was leaning further toward me, gesturing with her hands as she spoke. You're really into this, I asked. I can remember a time, she said sternly, when you talked about these kinds of experiences. Her comment jolted me. She was right. There had been a period in my life that I had indeed experienced such coincidences and had even tried to understand them psychologically. Somewhere along the way, my view changed. He stopped searching for his personal legend, and I had to begun to regard such perceptions as immature and unrealistic for some reason. I had stopped even noticing. I looked directly at Charlene, then said defensively, I was probably reading Eastern philosophy or some Christian mysticism at the time. That's what you remember. Anyway, what you're calling the first insight has been written about many times, Charlene. What's different now? How is perception of a mysterious occurrence going to lead to a cultural transformation? Charlene looked down at the table for an instant, then back at me. Don't misunderstand, she said. Certainly, this conscience has been experienced and described before. In fact, the priest made point to say that the first insight wasn't new. He said individuals have been aware of these unexplained coincidences throughout history, that this had been the perception behind many great attempts at philosophy and religion. But the difference now lies in the numbers. According to the priest, the transformation is occurring now because the number of individuals having this awareness all the, all at the same time. What did he mean exactly? I asked. He told me the manuscript says the number of people who are conscious of such coincidences will grow dramatically in the sixth decade of the 20th century. He said this growth will continue until sometime near the beginning of the following century, when we will reach a specific level of such individuals, a level I think as a critical mass. The manuscript predicts, she went on, that once we reach this critical mass, the entire culture will begin to take these coincidental experiences seriously. We will wonder en masse what mysterious process underlies human life on this planet. And it will be this question asked at the same time by enough people that will allow the other insights to also come into consciousness. Because according to the manuscript, when a sufficient number of individuals seriously question what's going on in life, we will begin to find out. The other insights will begin to be revealed one after another. She paused to take a bite of food. That's what the priest told me, she said. I looked at her for a moment, contemplating the idea of a critical mass, then said, You know, all this sounds awfully sophisticated for a manuscript written in 600 BC. I know, she replied. I raised the same question myself, but the priest assured me that the scholars who first translated the manuscript were absolutely convinced of its authenticity, mainly because it was written in Aramaic, the language of which much of the Old Testament was written. Aramaic in South America? How did it get there in 600 BC? The priest didn't know. Does his church support the manuscript? I asked. No, she said. He told me that most of the clergy were bitterly trying to suppress the manuscript. That's why he couldn't tell me his name. Apparently, talking about it at all was very dangerous for him. Did he say why most church officials were fighting against it? Yes, because it challenges the completeness of their religion. How? I don't know exactly. He didn't discuss it much. But apparently, the other insights extend some of the church's traditional ideas in a way that alarms the church elders, who thinks these things are fine the way they are. The priest did say, Charlene went on, that he doesn't think the manuscript undermines any of the church's principles. If anything, it clarifies exactly what is meant by those spiritual truths. He felt strongly that the church leaders would see this fact if they would try to see life as mysterious again, and then proceed through the other insights. Did he tell you how many insights there were? No, but he did mention the second insight. He told me it was more correct interpretation of a recent history, one that further clarifies the transformation. Did he elaborate on that? No, he didn't have time. He said I'd have to leave. He had to leave to take care of some business. We agreed to meet back at his house that afternoon, but when I arrived, he wasn't there. I waited 3 hours and he still didn't show up. Finally, I had to leave to catch my flight home. You mean you weren't able to talk with him anymore? That's right. I never saw him again. And you never received any confirmation about the manuscript from the government? None. And how long did this take place? About a month and a half. For several minutes, we ate in silence. Finally, Charlene looked up and asked, "So, what do you think?" "I don't know," I said. Part of me remained skeptical of the idea that human beings could actually change. But another part of me was amazed to think that the manuscript which spoke in these terms might actually exist. "Did he show you a copy or anything?" I asked. "No, all I have are my notes." Again, we were silent. "You know," she said, "I had thought you'd be really excited about these ideas." I looked at her. "I guess I need some proof that this manuscript says it's true." She smiled broadly again. "What?" I asked. "That's exactly what I said too." "To whom? The priest?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "He said that experience is the evidence." "What did he mean by that?" "He meant that our experience validates what the manuscript says. When we truly reflect on how we feel inside, on how our lives are proceeding at this point in history, we can see that the ideas in the manuscript make sense, that they ring true." She hesitated. "Does it make sense to you?" I thought for a moment. "Does it make sense? Is everyone as restless as me? If so, does our restlessness result from a simple insight, the simple awareness built up for 30 years that there is really more to life than we know, more that we can experience?" "I'm not sure," I finally said. "I guess I need some time to think about it." I walked out to the garden beside the restaurant and stood behind the cedar birch facing the fountain. To my right, I could see the pulsating lights at the airport and hear roaring engines of a jet ready for takeoff. "What beautiful flowers," Charlene said from behind me. I turned to see her walking towards me along the walkway, admiring the rows of petunias and begonias which bordered the sitting area. She stood beside me and I put my arm around her. Memories flooded my mind. Years ago, when we had both lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, we had spent regular evenings together talking. Most of our discussions were about academic theories and psychological growth. We had both been fascinated by the conversations by each other. Yet, it struck me how platonic our relationship had always been. "I can tell you," she said, "how nice it is to see you again." "I know," I replied. "Seeing you brings back a lot of memories." "I wonder why we didn't stay in touch," she asked. Her question took me back again. I recalled the last time I seen Charlene. She was telling me goodbye at my car. At the time, I felt full of new ideas and was departing for my hometown to work with severely abused children. I thought I knew how such children could transcend the intense reactions, the obsessive acting out that kept them from going on with their lives. But as time progressed, my approach had failed. I had to admit my ignorance. How humans might liberate themselves from their past was still an enigma to me. Looking back over the previous 6 years, I now felt sure the experience I had been worthwhile. Yet I also felt the urge to move on. But to where? To do what? I had thought of Charlene only a few times since she had helped me crystallize my ideas about childhood trauma. And now here she was again, back in my life. And our conversation felt just as exciting as before. I guess I got totally absorbed in my work. So did I, she replied. At the paper, it was one story after another. I didn't have time to look up. I forgot about everything else. I squeezed her shoulder. You know, Charlene, I had forgotten how well we talked together. Our conversation seems easy and spontaneous. Her eyes and smile confirmed my perception. I know, she said. Conversations with you give me so much energy. I was about to make another comment when Charlene stared past me towards the entrance to the restaurant. Her face grew anxious and pale. What's wrong? I asked, turning around and looking that direction. Several people were walking towards the parking lot, talking casually, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I turned to face Charlene again. She still appeared alarmed and confused. What was it? I repeated, over by the first row of cars. Did you see that man in the gray shirt? I looked toward the parking lot again. Another group was exiting the door. What man? I guess he's not there now, she said, straining to see. She looked directly into my eyes. When the people at the other tables described the man who stole my briefcase, they said he had thinning hair and a beard and wore a gray shirt. I think I just saw him over there by the cars watching us. A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I told Charlene I'd be right back and walked to the parking lot to look around, careful not to get too far away. I saw no one who fit the description. When I returned to the bench, Charlene took a step close to me and said softly, do you suppose this person thinks I have a copy of the manuscript? And that's why he stole my briefcase? He's trying to get it back? I don't know, I said, but we're going to call the police again to tell them what you saw. I think they ought to check out the passengers on your flight. We walked inside and called the police. When they arrived, we informed them of what had occurred. They spent 20 minutes checking each car, then explained that they could invest no more time. They did agree to check all the passengers boarding the plane Charlene would be on. After the police had left, Charlene and I found ourselves standing alone again by the fountain. What were we talking about anyway, she asked, before I saw that man. We were talking about us, I replied. Charlene, why did you think to contact me about all this? She gave me a perplexed look. When I was in Peru and the police was telling me about the manuscript, you kept popping up in my mind. Oh, yeah? I didn't think too much about it then, she continued, but later, after I returned to Virginia, every time I would think of the manuscript, I would think of you. I started to call several times, but always got distracted. Then I received this assignment in Miami that I'm heading to now, and I discovered after I had boarded the plane that I had a layover here. When I landed, I looked up your number. Your answer machine said to contact you at the lake only in an emergency, but I decided it would be okay to call. I looked at her for a moment, unsure of what to think. Of course, I finally replied. I'm glad you did. Charlene glanced at her watch. It's getting late. I better get back to the airport. I'll drive you, I said. We drove to the main terminal and walked towards the embarkington area, whatever. I watched carefully for anything unusual. When we arrived, the plane was already boarding, and one of the policemen we had met was observing each passenger. When we approached him, he told us that he observed everyone scheduled to board and no one fit the description of the thief. We thanked him, and after he had left, Charlene turned and smiled at me. I guess I'd better go, she said, reaching out to hug my neck. Here are my numbers. Let's keep in touch this time. Listen, I said, I want you to be careful. If you see anything strange, call the police. Don't worry about me, she replied. I'll be fine. For an instant, we looked deeply into each other's eyes. What are you going to do with this manuscript? I asked. I don't know. Listen for news reports about it, I guess. What if it's suppressed? She gave me another of her full smiles. I knew it, she said. You're hooked. I told you you'd love it. What are you going to do? I shrugged. See if I can find out more about it properly. Good. If you do, let me know. We said goodbye and she walked away. I watched as she turned once and waved, then disappeared down the boarding corridor. I walked to my truck and drove back to the lake, stopping only for gas. When I arrived, I walked out to the screen porch and sat in one of the rockers. The evening was loud with crickets and tree frogs, and in the distance I could hear a whippoorwill. Across the lake, the moon had sunk lower in the west and sent a ripple line of reflection towards me on the water surface. The evening had been interesting, but I was still skeptical about the whole idea of cultural transformation. Like many people, I had been caught up in social idealism of the 60s and 70s, and even in the spiritual interest of the 80s. But it was hard to judge what was really happening. What kind of new information could possibly alter the entire human world? It sounded too idealistic and far fetched. After all, humans have been alive on this planet for a long time. Why would we suddenly gain insight into the existence now? At this late date, I gazed out at the water for a few more minutes, then turned off the lights, went into the bedroom to read. The next morning I woke up with the dream still fresh on my mind. For a minute or two, I stared at the bedroom ceiling, remembering it fully. I had been making my way through a forest searching for something. The forest was large and exceptionally beautiful. In my quest, I found myself in a number of situations in which I felt totally lost and bewildered, unable to decide how to proceed. Incredibly, at each of these moments, a person would appear out of nowhere, as though by design to clarify where I needed to go next. I never became aware of the object of my search, but the dream had left me feeling incredibly upbeat and confident. I sat up and noticed a beam of sunlight coming through the window across the room. It sparkled with suspended dust particles. Hmm. I walked over and pulled back the curtains. The day was radiant, blue sky, bright sunshine. The stiff breeze gently rocked the trees. The lake would be rippled and glistening this time of day, and the wind chilly against the swimmer's wet skin. I walked outside and dove in. I surfaced and swam out into the middle of the lake, turning on my back to look at the familiar mountains. The lake rested in a deep valley where three mountain ridges converged, in a perfect lake site discovered by my grandfather in his youth. It had now been a hundred years since he had first walked the ridges, a child explorer, a prodigy, growing up in a world that was still wild with cougar and boar and Creek Indians that lived in primitive cabins up in the North Ridge. He had sworn at the time that one day he would live in this perfect valley with the massive old trees and seven springs, and finally he had. Later to build a lake and a cabin, and to take countless walks with his young grandson. I never quite understood my grandfather's fascination with the valley, but I had always tried to preserve the land, even when civilization encroached it, then surrounded it. From the middle of the lake, I could see particular rock outcropping near the crest of the North Ridge. The day before, in the tradition of my grandfather, I had climbed to that overhang, trying to find some peace in the view and in the smells and in the way the wind whirled in the treetops. And as I had sat up there, surveying the lake and the dense foliage in the valley below, I had slowly felt better, as if the energy and perspective were dissolving some block in my mind. Only a few hours later, I had been talking with Charlene and heard about the manuscript. I had swam back and pulled myself up to the wooden pier in front of the cabin. I knew all of this was too much to believe. I mean, here I was hiding out in these hills, feeling totally disenchanted with my life, when out of the blue, Charlene shows up and explains the cause of my restlessness, quoting some old manuscript that promises the secret of the human existence. Yet, I also knew that Charlene's arrival was exactly the sort of coincidence that the manuscript spoke, one that seemed too unlikely to be a mere chance event. Could this ancient document be correct? Have we been slowly building, in spite of our denial and cynicism, a critical mass of people conscious of these coincidences, where humans now in a position to understand this phenomenon and thus finally to understand the purpose of life behind itself? What I wondered, would this new understanding be? Would the remaining insights in the manuscript tell us, as the preacher had said? I faced a decision. Because of the manuscript, I felt a new direction open up in my life, a new point of interest. The question was, what do I do now? I could remain here, or I could find a way to explore further. The issue of danger entered my mind. Who had stolen Charlene's briefcase? Was it someone working to suppress the manuscript? How could I know? I thought about the possible risk for a long time, but finally my mood of optimism prevailed. I decided not to worry. I would be careful and go slowly. I walked inside and called the travel agency with the largest ad in the yellow pages. The agent with whom I spoke said that he could indeed arrange a trip to Peru. In fact, by chance, there was a cancellation I could feel. A flight with reservations already confirmed at a hotel in Lima. I could have the whole package at a discount, he said, if I can leave in 3 hours. 3 hours? I'll start a little bit. The longer now. After a frenzy of packing and a wild ride on the freeway, I arrived at the airport with just enough time to pick up my ticket and board the flight for Peru. As I walked into the plane's tail section and sat down in the window seat, fatigue swept over me. I thought about a nap, but when I stretched out and closed my eyes, I found I couldn't relax. I suddenly felt nervous and ambivalent about the trip. Was it crazy to depart with no preparation? Where would I go in Peru? To whom would I talk? The confidence I had experienced at the lake was quickly fading back into skepticism. Both the first insight and the idea of cultural transformation again seemed fanciful and unrealistic. And as I thought about it, the concept of a second insight seemed just as unlikely. How could a new historical perspective institute our perception of these coincidences and keep them conscious in the public mind? I stretched out further and took a deep breath. Maybe it would be a useless trip, I concluded. Just a quick run to Peru and back. A waste of money perhaps, but no real harm done. The plane jerked forward and taxied out the runway. I closed my eyes and felt a mild dizziness as the big jet reached the critical speed and lifted into a thick cloud cover. When we reached cruising altitude, I finally relaxed and drifted into sleep. 30 or 40 minutes later, a stretch of turbulence woke me up and I decided to go to the restroom. As I as I made my way through the lounge area, I noticed a tall man with round glasses standing near the window, talking to a flight attendant. He glanced at me briefly, then continued speaking. He had dark brown hair and appeared to be about 45 years old. For an instant, I thought I recognized him, but after looking at his features closely, I concluded that he was no one I knew. As I walked past, I could hear part of the conversation. Thanks anyway, the man said. I just thought since you traveled to Peru so often, Maybe you had heard something about the manuscript. He turned away and walked towards the front of the plane. I was dumbstruck. Was he speaking of the same manuscript? I walked into the restroom and tried to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to forget about it. Probably he was talking about something else, some other book. I returned to my seat and closed my eyes again, content to write off the incident. Glad I didn't have to ask that man what he meant. But as I sat there, I thought about the excitement I had felt at the lake. What if this man actually had information about the manuscript? What might happen then? If I didn't inquire, I would never know. I wavered several more times in my mind, then finally stood up and walked towards the front of the plane, finding him about midway up the aisle. Directly behind him was an empty seat. I walked back and told the attendant I wanted to move, then gathered my things and took the seat. After a few minutes, I tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me," I said. "I heard you mention in the manuscript. Were you speaking of the one found in Peru?" He looked surprised, then cautious. "Yes, I was," he said tentatively. I introduced myself and explained that a friend had been to Peru recently and informed me of the manuscript's existence. He visibly relaxed and introduced himself as Wayne Dobson, an assistant professor of history from New York University. As we spoke, I noticed a look of irritation coming from a gentleman sitting next to me. He had leaned back in his seat and was attempting to sleep. "Have you seen the manuscript?" I asked the professor. "Parts of it," he said. "Have you?" "No, but my friend told me about the first insight." The man beside me began to change his position. Dobson looked his way. "Excuse me, sir. I know we're disturbing you. Would it be much trouble for you to exchange seats with me?" "No," the man said. "That would be preferable." We all stepped into the aisle, and then I slid into the window seat, and Dobson sat beside me. "Tell me what you heard concerning the first insight," Dobson said. I paused for a moment, trying to sum up in my mind what I understood. "I guess the first insight is an awareness of mysterious occurrences that change one's life, the feeling that some other process is operating." I felt absurd as I said it. Dobson picked up on my discomfort. "What do you think of that insight?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "It doesn't quite fit with our modern day common sense, does it? Wouldn't you feel better dismissing the whole idea and getting back to thinking about practical matters?" I laughed and nodded affirmingly. "Well, that's everyone's tendency, even though we occasionally have the clear insight that something more is going on in life. Our habitual way of thinking is to consider such ideas unknowable and then shrug off the awareness together. That's why the second insight is necessary. Once we see the historical background to our awareness, it seems more valid." I nodded. "Then as a historian, you think the manuscript prediction of global transformation is accurate?" "Yes." "As a historian?" "Yes. But you have to look at history in the correct way." He took a deep breath. "Believe me, I say this as one person who has spent a lot of years studying and teaching history in the wrong way. I used to focus solely on technological accomplishments of civilizations and the great man who brought this about." "What's wrong with that approach?" "Nothing, as far as it goes. But what's really important is the worldview of each historical period, what the people were feeling and thinking. It took me a long time to understand that. History is supposed to provide a knowledge of longer context within which our lives take place. History is not just the evolution of technology, it is the evolution of thought. By understanding the reality of the people who came before us, we can see why we look at the world the way we do and what our contribution is towards further progress. We can pinpoint where we come in, so to speak, in the longer development of civilization. Okay. I think that's a good spot. We'll pause there and pick up. We hit our hour. I appreciate your family as always. Um, what we got Tuesday, and Tuesday I think we did we do suggestion to reprogram our mind, and I think we're going to talk about symbols next. Symbols, using symbols to reprogram our minds, and yeah, and Thursday we will continue reading the Celestine Prophecies. So I'm curious to think how you may feel about that first insight. The awareness is ironic. And I read this years ago, and at times I still feel like that's what we're dealing with now, which is crazy, right? But family, I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and a fantabulous weekend. And I will see you Tuesday, family.